Imagine sitting in a courtroom where most eyes drop to the floor, except one boy's eyes fix on the clock. And when the judge asks his name, he says, "I'm the governor's son, sir. Can we wrap this up quicker?" A ripple moves through the room. Benchwood creaks. A reporter's pen pauses mid-scratch. Someone clears a dry throat. The fluorescent lights hum like a stubborn thought. Judge Frank Caprio lifts a brow. Not angry, just surprised the way you are when a door you've opened for years suddenly sticks. On the defense table, Andrew Collins, 23, sun-burnished confidence in a tailored jacket, no tie. Phone cupped in one hand, thumb idly scrolling, face polished with the same care as his shoes. He leans back as if hearings arrive on his schedule. The docket says excessive speed, unsafe operation, downtown, one citation logged during a community kids event near a school. Small on paper, not small in a hallway of parents who walk those crosswalks every day. Caprio's voice stays even. "State your name for the record." "Andrew Collins," the young man answers, glancing at his screen again. "Look, sir, honestly, this is minor. I'll pay whatever calms things down." A thin laugh flits from the gallery and dies. The clerk stops turning pages. The officer who wrote the ticket watches a spot on the wall, jaw set. Caprio folds his hands. His pauses are sharp, like clean cuts. "Young man, you seem to think time here is yours. Today, it might become your sentence." Andrew smiles, as if hearing a clever line at a fundraiser. "I've got a meeting at the State House. My father doesn't like me late." Somebody whispers, "Of course he doesn't," and the room stirs. Cameras tilt upward. Caprio lifts one finger. Sound drains away. "Recorder off," he tells the clerk. The red light clicks dark. He lets the quiet stretch until even the clock seems to tick softer. "You just turned a routine fine into a question of respect. Respect for the law, and for the people standing behind you." Andrew shifts, finally tucking the phone face down. "Sir, with respect, I didn't hurt anyone. It's a ticket." "In a school corridor?" Caprio asks, tone still mild. "Where the margin for error is the length of a child's arm." Air tightens. The smell of coffee from the hallway fades under the weight of what he's said. Andrew's grin thins, then returns out of habit. Caprio opens the file. Paper whispers. "Downtown midday. Marked event. Posted 20. You were substantially above." He closes it with a soft tap. "We will not barter minutes today. We will account for them." Andrew glances at the door, an exit he expects to appear when he needs it. It doesn't. "Here's how we proceed," Caprio says. "You'll put the phone away. You'll answer questions. You'll stop measuring this room by your father's calendar." The officer nods once, almost imperceptible. A journalist lowers her camera. Outside, a siren climbs and fades into city noise. Inside, the clock resumes its steady count, impartial as gravity, while a young man realizes that for the next few minutes, his last name buys nothing at all. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. "Let's try this without banners or borrowed names," Judge Caprio said, eyes steady. "Tell me who you are, Mr. Collins. No titles, no family." Andrew lifted one shoulder. "Normal stuff. Prep school, varsity crew. I'm helping with my dad's campaign this cycle. Sometimes I drive fast. I keep it under control. I'm not bothering anyone." The words arrived smooth, practiced, and strangely hollow. The gallery felt it. Even the clerk paused with the stamp held in midair. Caprio didn't look at the file. "Do you remember the crosswalk on Broadway by St. Martin's?" His voice thinned to a quiet wire. "Last year, a car took that stretch at 30 over. A child died. 3 seconds. That's all it took." The room tightened. Somewhere a chair leg clicked against the floor and then went still. Andrew blinked, the confidence wobbling for a beat. "With respect, Judge, I'm not a killer." "That's extreme." A soft wave of disapproval rolled through the benches. Caprio raised his hand. The sound folded away. "This isn't about death," he said, tone even. "It's about life you haven't broken yet, and about the habit of believing other people's minutes are cheaper than yours." Andrew's gaze slid to the table edge. "I didn't see anyone. It was clear." "Streets look empty until the second before they aren't," Caprio replied. "Crossing guards, strollers, late teachers, a boy chasing a loose backpack strap. None of them schedule themselves around your errands." The young man swallowed. His phone, now dark beside his elbow, reflected a skewed version of his face. Caprio leaned back slightly, voice softening without losing its edge. You say you help with a campaign. Then you know the weight of appearances. Let me give you one. A sedan pushing past a school sign while a badge clocks the number. Think of every parent who's held a hand at that corner. What do they see? Not your last name. A risk. Andrew opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. I hear you. I just didn't think a few miles would matter. A few miles an hour, the judge said, is the difference between a scare and a funeral, between a stern lecture and a lifetime of calendars with one day circled in black. Silence pooled. The fluorescent hum seemed louder now, as if the building itself were listening. Caprio let the moment breathe. You've been spared hard consequences so far. That breeds a certain blindness. I'm not here to scold you. I'm here to remove the blindfold. Andrew's shoulders dipped, almost imperceptibly. The grin he'd worn like armor didn't return. Good, Caprio said quietly. Now we can talk. He tapped the folder once, a small, decisive sound. Because understanding is the first thing I require. Payment comes later. The clerk handed over a slim stack of papers, freshly printed, the ink still faintly glistening. Judge Caprio flipped through them slowly, the rustle slicing through the silence. Mr. Collins, he said, not looking up, it seems today isn't your first visit to the edge of trouble. Andrew's head tilted. I don't recall anything serious, sir. That's the interesting part, Caprio murmured. 3 prior warnings. 2 were dismissed. 1 simply vanished. A neat trick, wouldn't you say? Andrew blinked. I suppose mistakes happen. Clerical things. Clerical, the judge repeated softly, almost to himself. He placed the papers down with care, aligning their edges. Does your father know you're here this morning? Andrew's jaw tightened. He told me to handle it quickly. He's in session. And that means what exactly? Caprio asked. That I'm to wave this through so the schedule of government remains uninterrupted? No, when I was your age, Caprio interrupted gently. I mopped the floor of this very building, night after night. It's where I learned that no job is small when you're the one doing it. That line hung in the air. The young man looked away, the smirk he'd worn since walking and faltering at the edges. Caprio noticed his gaze flicker toward the door, nervous, expectant. Seconds later, the door opened. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped inside, briefcase in hand. He whispered something to the clerk, then advanced toward the bench, holding out a folded note. Caprio didn't take it. And you are? Legal counsel representing the governor's office, the man said crisply. Just a quick word, Your Honor. The judge leaned back in his chair. Counsel, this court doesn't hold side conversations in corridors of power. You may speak here or not at all. The lawyer's confidence faltered. It's just a clarification, administrative. Caprio's tone stayed calm, but carried steel. Administrative interference, you mean? The kind that makes warnings disappear? The gallery stirred, a few gasps, a whisper of movement. The judge's gavel came down once, not in anger, but in command. Quiet. Andrew shifted uneasily. Sir, my father didn't ask him to. Caprio raised a hand. Mr. Collins, the law does not inherit from father to son. It must be earned each time it's faced. The lawyer, realizing the futility, mumbled something about miscommunication and backed toward the exit. Caprio waited until the door clicked shut before continuing. Every person who sits in that chair thinks their story is unique, he said, voice low, almost reflective. But privilege writes the same script over and over, different names, same handwriting. Andrew's throat moved dry. I didn't ask for special treatment. No, Caprio replied. But you didn't refuse it either. The young man looked down, fingers pressing against the table's edge as if it might steady him. You see, Mr. Collins, Caprio continued, power is not the sin. Entitlement is. The first can build a bridge. The second burns everyone you cross. The silence that followed was longer than any so far. Even the bailiff seemed reluctant to breathe. Finally, Caprio exhaled, a long, measured sound. We'll take a recess, he said. 15 minutes. Use them wisely. Andrew frowned. For what? The judge met his eyes squarely. To decide if you're ready to speak as a man, or keep hiding behind a last name. The gavel struck, and the room broke apart like a held breath released. Andrew didn't move. The phone in his pocket buzzed, once, twice, but he didn't reach for it. Around him, people gathered coats, whispered, glanced. He stayed still, staring at the empty space where the lawyer had stood moments ago. Outside, through the narrow window, he could see the Capitol dome, gleaming, distant, unreachable in the bright noon sun. For the first time that morning, Andrew Collins realized there were rooms in this city where his father's shadow didn't reach. And in one of them, he was just another man who'd run out of excuses. When the recess ended, the air inside the courtroom had changed. The chatter was gone. Reporters who once smirked into their notebooks now sat motionless. Even the fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, softer, as if aware something had shifted. Andrew Collins returned to his seat. The phone was gone from his hand. The grin, too. Only that posture remained, straight-backed, proud, as if arrogance might still serve as armor. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses and spoke quietly. "I gave you time to think, Mr. Collins. Is there anything you'd like to say before we continue?" Andrew's tone was low, steady. "No point, sir. You've already made up your mind." The judge's voice was gentle, but the stillness that followed was hard as stone. "It wasn't me who decided, young man. You did a long time ago." He lifted a sheet of paper. The crisp sound echoed off the wood. "A year ago, you were cited for speeding in nearly the same place. Do you remember that?" Andrew frowned. "Vaguely. You didn't pay that fine," Caprio continued. "It was paid for you by the principal of the very school whose students you endangered." The room inhaled sharply, one collective breath. Caprio went on, slow, deliberate. He did it quietly. He didn't want it in the papers. Said it would hurt the boy's future. Andrew's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask him to do that." "No," Caprio said. "But you didn't stop him, either." The words landed like a stone dropped into deep water, ripples moving through the benches. Caprio looked toward the clerk. "Play the recording, please." From the speakers, the faint crackle of a phone call filled the silence. Then a man's voice, older, composed, unmistakably powerful. "He's just a boy. Handle it quietly. Don't ruin his future." Everyone knew that voice. Caprio exhaled through his nose, almost a sigh. Seems someone's been busy ruining his own. Andrew's face flushed. "You think this proves something? That I'm some spoiled villain?" His voice rose, the control slipping. "You have no idea what it's like living in his shadow. Every choice I make, it's his name people see, not mine. You think I don't want to earn something on my own?" The eruption startled even him. For the first time, it wasn't arrogance. It was raw, unguarded pain. Caprio didn't move. He simply waited, letting the storm burn itself out. Then, when the last word dissolved, he spoke softly. "Good. Finally, you said something real." Andrew blinked, breathing hard. "You've spent your life trying to prove you're not your father." The judge continued, voice low but unwavering. "But rebellion isn't proof of independence. It's another form of obedience to the very thing you claim to despise." A long silence followed. The cameras were forgotten. Even the clerk seemed frozen mid-note. Caprio leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "You want out of that shadow? Then tell the truth. For once. Not for a headline. Not for your father. For yourself." Andrew's lips parted, but no words came. The rhythm of his breath filled the room like the ticking of a clock. Finally, he looked up, eyes stripped of their earlier defiance. "I don't even know what the truth is anymore." Caprio nodded, not unkindly. "Then that's where we'll start." He folded the paper neatly, his movements slow and deliberate, as if closing a chapter. Because before a man can answer for what he's done, he must first learn to face who he is. The gavel didn't fall. It didn't need to. The sound of that line alone felt final enough. For the first time since the hearing began, Andrew sat completely still, not as the governor's son, not as the headline everyone expected, just a young man realizing that this, perhaps, was the moment his life stopped being borrowed. And somewhere behind the silence, faint but undeniable, was the sound of something breaking. Not punishment, not pride, something far deeper. The next morning, the courtroom filled again, this time without the restless whisper of curiosity. The crowd seemed to breathe slower, as if each person sensed that what was about to unfold was no longer a matter of traffic violations, but of something far more human. The wooden benches creaked beneath the weight of silence. Andrew sat straighter than before, but the cold defiance that once defined him was gone. He looked different, not broken, just emptied. Judge Caprio entered quietly, no theatrics, only presence. His robe moved with the faint rustle of paper. "We will resume," he said. "Officer Miller, please take the stand." A police officer stepped forward, mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much of people's excuses. He adjusted the microphone. "I stopped Mr. Collins that morning," he began. "He ran a red light near the elementary school. Nearly struck a woman pushing a stroller. If I hadn't hit the siren when I did," he paused, swallowed. "Well, I don't like to finish that sentence." Murmurs spread through the gallery. Caprio's gaze moved to Andrew. "Is this accurate, Mr. Collins?" Andrew hesitated. "Yes, but she wasn't hurt." You just said she wasn't hurt," Caprio interrupted quietly. "Say it again, and listen to how hollow it sounds." The silence was immediate, suffocating. "Your defense," the judge continued, "is that your recklessness did not produce a tragedy this time. You understand the difference between innocence and luck, Mr. Collins?" Andrew's throat bobbed. "I do now." Then, a voice rose from the back of the room, soft but unmistakably clear. "That was me." Every head turned. A woman stood, early 30s, modest coat, holding the hand of a small boy. Her knuckles were white against his fingers. "I'm the one you almost hit," she said. Andrew froze. The air left the room. She took a step forward, her voice steady but trembling at its edges. "I remember your eyes," she said. "You looked right at me and kept driving." The boy looked up, confused but curious, sensing something larger than he could name. Caprio nodded gently to her. "You may speak." She swallowed hard. "I didn't come here for revenge. I came because I want him to understand. I want him to know what it's like to stand in the middle of that crosswalk, watching a car that doesn't slow down and thinking, 'This is it.'" Andrew's face went pale. His mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the floor, the polished wood suddenly too bright. "I couldn't sleep for nights after that," the woman went on, voice breaking now. "Every sound of tires on wet pavement made me jump. My son still grabs my hand too tight when we cross the street." She looked at him then, not with hatred, but with something far worse, disappointed compassion. "You didn't just scare me. You erased trust for a while." Tears rimmed her eyes, but she didn't look away. Caprio waited a beat before speaking. "Do you wish to request a penalty, ma'am?" She shook her head. "No, Your Honor. I only wanted him to see that people have lives outside his windshield." It was the quietest the courtroom had been all day. Caprio turned toward Andrew again. "Well?" Andrew's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "I believe that," Caprio said softly. "But intention and consequence rarely dine at the same table." The judge stood then, not towering but grounded, like the moral center of gravity in the room. "You've spent your life being protected from consequence, young man. People shielding you, erasing mistakes, sweeping debris behind your privilege. But every time someone saves you from yourself, they steal from you the one thing that makes a man grow: responsibility." He looked around the courtroom, sweeping his eyes across the crowd, then back to Andrew. "You asked yesterday if I'd already made up my mind. I hadn't, but now I see it clearly." Andrew's head lifted slightly, waiting. "I will not sentence you today," Caprio said, "because the real sentence has already begun. It's the one you'll serve in your own reflection." The gavel didn't fall this time. Instead, the judge stepped forward just enough that his voice softened. "Mr. Collins, you are not on trial for speeding. You are on trial for blindness, for forgetting that behind every stoplight is a story, and behind every law, a life." Andrew's eyes glistened. "What do I do now?" The judge's answer came slow, deliberate. "That depends on what kind of man you want to be when the name Collins no longer shields you." The woman with the child turned toward the door, pausing for a heartbeat. The boy looked back, small hand raised in a quiet wave. Andrew lifted his own hand, hesitant, unsure if he had the right. When they were gone, the judge sat again, exhaustion visible in his shoulders. "This court," he said softly, "will reconvene tomorrow. Perhaps by then, you'll have something to say that isn't an excuse." The crowd exhaled, one long, collective breath, half pity, half respect. As people filed out, Andrew stayed seated, staring at the empty aisle where the woman had walked. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, but he ignored it. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a mirror. And when he finally rose to leave, he did so slowly, as if each step might carry the weight of someone else's life beneath it. The following morning, the The courtroom was quieter than it had ever been. No cameras, no crowd murmurs, just the low hum of the overhead lights and the steady rhythm of footsteps as Judge Caprio took his seat. Andrew Collins was already there, waiting. He looked different. The suit was the same, but the posture had changed. The arrogance that once filled the air around him had dissolved into something simpler, almost fragile. Caprio set his glasses down. "Mr. Collins," he said, "you've had a night to think. I could fine you $10,000 for reckless driving and contempt of court. Or," he paused, letting the word linger, "I could offer you something far more valuable." Andrew's voice was quiet. "What's that?" "A chance," Caprio said, "to earn back your own respect." The room was so still. Even the clock seemed to hold its breath. "You will spend the next week volunteering at the very school whose children you endangered," the judge continued. "Each morning, you'll stand with the crossing guards and help those kids get to class safely. You'll see their faces, learn their names. And maybe, if you pay attention, you'll remember what it means to be responsible for someone other than yourself." Andrew blinked, startled. "You want me to direct traffic?" His laugh was short, nervous. "People will take pictures. My father." "Your father has had enough pictures," Caprio interrupted. "The world doesn't need to see your punishment." "You do." Andrew hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll do it." "Not for me," Caprio said, leaning forward. "Do it because next time, it might not be a lesson. It might be a life." The gavel came down once, soft, final. Court adjourned. The narration shifted, weeks later. A chilly morning in Providence. The sun hung low over the horizon, spilling gold across the asphalt. Andrew stood beside a painted crosswalk, a reflective vest draped awkwardly over his tailored coat. He held a small stop sign, its red surface catching the light. A group of children clustered at the curb, their backpacks bouncing as they waited. A little girl smiled up at him. "Are you the man who almost hit somebody?" she asked bluntly. He flinched, then nodded. "Yes," he said. "But today, I'm the one making sure nobody else does." The children giggled. The light turned green for them. As they crossed, he raised the sign higher, holding it steady until they reached the other side. For the first time, the simple act of standing still felt heavier than all his speeches and inherited power combined. Cars slowed. A few drivers glanced his way, recognizing the face that had once appeared beside his father's in campaign posters. Some smirked. Others just watched. But Andrew didn't look back. When the last child disappeared through the school gate, he lowered the sign, exhaling slowly. The sound of traffic swelled around him, a rhythm he no longer took for granted. Later, in his chambers, Judge Caprio recorded a note for the court's community archive. His voice was calm, thoughtful. "There are laws," he said, "and there is justice. Laws punish behavior. Justice teaches the heart. Sometimes, to make a person see, you don't need to lock them away. You just need to put them in someone else's shoes, even if only for a week." He paused. Mr. Collins did what was asked of him. He stood in the cold. He faced the eyes of the people he'd endangered, and he learned something that can't be legislated: empathy. The recording clicked off. Outside, the bell from the same school echoed faintly through the open window. Caprio leaned back, whispering to no one. Sometimes, justice isn't a sentence. It's a reflection. And in that stillness, the story ended, not with applause or punishment, but with the quiet sound of a man beginning, finally, to understand the weight of being seen.